Hey there, Fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. I'm Mark Francis, once again, one of your hosts for the day. We have an exciting episode here for you today. This past weekend, we were able to have the Fellowship family meeting, and it naturally lends to have a recap of that on the Fellowship family podcast. Perfect. And with me, I have a key crowd of people here. I have, to my right, Alicia Battaglia. How are you?
I'm very well.
Is this your first Fellowship family
This is
episode?
my first
What?
Fellowship family.
Big hand to that.
We have
Yes.
failed you. That's great.
So
I haven't needed to
we
talk
also
about
have,
anything here.
you've heard him now, Caleb Pearson is in the house as well.
Hey, everybody.
And then we have the newest host in the Fellowship Bible Church podcast gang, Abby Linaburg. How are you?
Whoop, whoop.
You made the cut.
Yeah. Get close to that microphone. Get ready so we can hear you loud and clear, because we want to hear about what's going on with you and your world and your perspectives of this meeting. But the goal of this episode is really to rehash and recap what we heard, and then maybe what might have been left on the chopping room floor, because I feel like things just went bang, bang, bang so quick that people were almost overwhelmed with all the content. So
Real quick, hard pause. Happy birthday, Mark Francis.
Happy
I know you didn't want it.
No.
Here, I got this for you. Lemon and ginger herbal tea.
Okay.
Took it from
Caleb,
Rose's
was
desk.
that herbal tea or herbal tea?
Herbal,
Oh.
right? Silent H.
I thought you said herbal.
I probably did.
I love it. I'll hold it up.
I
This is my first gift of the day.
Really?
So it comes from
I
Caleb.
love you, dude.
Yeah.
But I did
Yes.
just grab that when I closed the door. I saw a bunch of them out there.
Well, it
I
shows
went
how
for
much
it.
you know me, because
Happy
I don't
birthday.
drink coffee and tea. So.
Me neither.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
There you go.
Anyway,
I'll take it.
happy
Love
birthday. Happy birthday, bud.
Take it.
Well, you've heard from all of them already, but Caleb and Alicia, I'll come to you first. Typically, this is the sermon spotlight gang, and kind of we were out there, trotted out on the stage to help assist Joe Hauser in hosting. And from that perspective, this is a little bit of a new thing. This is the second time we've done what's used to be called a congregational meeting. From this perspective. So I'll turn to you guys, but then Abby also chime in. What's your take of this new way of doing a congregational meeting, and how does it fit in with the title Fellowship Family Meeting? Give your take on that.
Well, I much more prefer to be in a family environment than a business environment.
No, that is a very interesting point.
Before, I think, traditional congregational meetings were more like business meetings, and they tend to be maybe pretty boring. But this, I think the restructuring of this has been really beneficial, because it is a family environment. Our church is our family. And I think it reflects who God is and how he loves his church and how he's caring for his church. And so the fact that we get to be together as brothers and sisters and see what God is doing, not only individually in our lives, but how our church together as brothers and sisters in
And how
Christ.
he's designed the church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How we're impacting our world around us.
Well, and here's the thing, Mark. We've been podcasting almost 4 years now, which
That's
is
amazing.
nuts.
Yeah.
But we, at least for the last 2 years or so, we've been really pushing the idea of stories and hearing from the congregation as well. And so it's been cool to be a part of the growth of the congregational meeting that used to be kind of this Sunday afternoon. You stay if you really want to learn something informational, which has always been great. They've never been bad. But to pivot and also include relational things happening, so that the body can be encouraged by the body a little bit as well, and it can be more of an event. And I will say, I know I've been a part of the last two, but people that miss it have missed it. And I think that's a telling sign of, I wish I was able to be there.
Right, yeah. And it's turned into more of an event too, versus hey, we have these few minutes and this is information you need, we'll get you in and out really quick. So hey, we value fellowship, we value time together, so come back tonight and spend time hearing this information, but also fellowshipping with everyone else.
And when you say it's an event, that's a positive comment,
Right,
right?
right.
Because it could be taken negatively.
Yeah,
Sure.
That it's overly produced and just give me back to the good old days. Just tell me what I need to know, give me in, give me out. But an event means, okay, there's something to it that, okay, I don't want to miss.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And for those who weren't there, what Abby is referring to is after the meeting, we gathered around dessert, and it just gave everybody an opportunity to talk, catch up, and really experience biblical fellowship, which
Yeah.
is cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even to like Joe Hauser's the man. Okay, it's hard to pick your favorite elder, but come on, I love me some Joe, and he did such a good job, like saying like,
We'll cast some votes.
That's how we'll do it at the next one. Yeah. Caleb, Mark, and Alicia, thanks for putting this all together, and I understand like why he said that, but so many people pulled this off. Just because we were hosting it didn't mean we knew everything that was going to be said, everything that was going to be shared. I was encouraged by a lot of it, especially when I got to sit down and hear from Al and Stephen and Mark just talk through the relational discipleship that's been happening, behind the scenes. And
the behind the scenes component, people don't think about, but I've had multiple people come to me and say, I appreciate what happened, how it happened, even just right now. A half hour before recording, I ran into Margaret Richardson. She is like the OG grandma of Fellowship Bible Church.
Yeah.
And she said, I just have to pause and thank you for what happened, because she was like, everything was done so well. People got up when they're supposed to get up and not told to, and there weren't gaps and pauses. And there's something about the production that she appreciated, but then she said it, but it was also the content, and it was the fellowship, and it was the family. Right after the event, somebody else grabbed me. And then another older couple that just said, we can't always get the communication threads at Fellowship. We're not always on websites or emails or things like that. And to have an event, like you're saying, Abby, that we could come to, that we can appreciate attending and hear all of this content, hear the updates, what's happening behind the scenes, they really valued. So that's the reaction that I've been getting from the meeting.
And before the meeting started, I was talking with several people, and I was some of the people who were doing some of the maintenance and work on the building, and just sharing with me the details about what that involves. And then I was watching the hospitality folks working, and there were so many people just doing behind the scene tasks that don't ever get recognized or seen. And I just kind of took a moment to thank the Lord, like this is your church, this is your people. Nobody has force them to do any of this. This is out of the generosity of their heart to do this for the body. But I think that also reflects just the generosity of God towards our church in that way, because man, what a gift this body is.
Yeah, and to me, it's not a worship service, but it had a worship component to it. It had a worship vibe and feel of giving God praise and glory and thanks for what he's doing in and through our body in a way that allowed people to respond and talk about it afterwards and have these kind of conversations to where, yes, it gave God the credit for all these things, and it told a story throughout the entire night. And that's where I wanted to turn to you, Abby, first, because I want to get your reaction on what you heard, and let's dive into the content of the meeting a little bit. Again, even for those of you guys that were there, let's dive into some things that kind of was reactionary. So tell us what you gleaned out of the meeting.
I think Caleb kind of wrapped it up at the end by saying, like, are you encouraged? And everyone was like, yes. Like, everything about the meeting, like you were saying, just had this energy of, like, encouragement and, like, praising God for all he's doing in our church that sometimes we don't always realize. But, yeah, I felt like each ministry, like, shared... It's stuff I know, because we work here. But for whatever reason, it like carried a little bit of a different weight. And then to wrap it all around with those testimonies at the end just felt really powerful to me. It was like, okay, we've heard about what these ministries do. Now here's how it actually worked for someone. Here's how it actually like changed their life. And I just thought that was really great in terms of the order.
Here's my answer, Mark. I love me some Bob Hess. When I get to hear the finances, it's so fun for me. Not just to like praise God for a giving church, which we have and is incredible, but I rewatched the finance podcast that you did with JVD and Bob. It was so good.
He did not heard that.
He did not want people to mention that, and you guys just took
Wait,
it away.
was I not supposed to?
No, it's fine. But he did not want to get any kind of recognition of being on camera at all.
And if you have not listened to or watched that podcast, go back and listen to the finance giving.
Let me clarify.
It's not
a podcast about like yay money. Like it explains the biblical proceedings of giving and some of the balances that are in place around here to help preserve and protect the way we go about that stuff. And all the different meetings and things I'm in, I don't often get exposure to a lot of that stuff. And so...
And Bob is funny, too, because going into this, I'm prepping each person on what they're going to say or hearing what they want to say and then reminding them of the timing and what they're going to do. He's like, 4 minutes is all I need. I'm going to be less than 4 minutes. he was the biggest culprit of the timing of his 4-minute allotment. I mean, he loves to tell jokes, but then he really loves the numbers and the finance and the details of his value of serving the church, and that's what came out in the heart of that episode last week. But just knowing that God is providing for us and seeing graphs and charts that show that over the years.
Well, can I ask a question to you and Abby then? You guys are part of the communication team, and you do a lot around here to figure out how to communicate everything that needs to get communicated. Is it encouraging to know that this is another outlet where we can communicate a lot of that stuff? It's not a Sunday morning. There's only so many announcements you can cram in there. It's not a bulletin board. There's only so many things you can fit. And it's not even just a table that's round and 2 feet wide, and you have to put everything on there. But it's an extra time to tell those stories. Has that been refreshing?
It's helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about at each communication team meeting is, where are we going with these episodes? Because we want to use them for tools to communicate to the body, but also an avenue for stories and God moments and testimonies to be shared, because we don't want to hide what God is doing in a bushel, let the light shine. Yeah. And so a meeting like that can bring a testimony of Stephen Storrs and Al Pinto to the forefront, or giving us a platform like these podcasts. This is the vision of what this podcast is meant to be about: fellowship, family. And the vision of that, we want to continue to have people on here that are sharing their testimonies and stories. So that to me is encouraging to have another platform, another avenue to share what God is doing here.
Right. And you can go, especially with podcasts, you can go a little more in depth. Like we heard from Stephen for like 5 minutes or whatever, and it was great, and that was encouraging. Could you imagine if it was a little bit longer and he went into a little more detail?
Right. Yeah.
Like it's just great, I think, to have that avenue.
Yeah.
So hitting then the theme of the night, moving from the idea of the mission statement to our historical perspective of relational discipleship, to now having an even greater definition of what discipleship looks like when you tack on outreach. What do you see coming out of this meeting, and what's the hope and goal of now seeing and hearing from Mark Carey, which, by the way, I want to comment on his 8 minutes and the challenge that he gave to our body of, we need to be an outreaching church. Sure. We need to be a church that is proclaiming Christ, and that is where we're going. That is why we're studying the book of Acts. God laid it on his heart for that. And here we're going to be for the next year with this outreach focus.
Yeah. Well, he emphasized that discipleship starts with the gospel. And he said somewhere in his talk to go and be. And I thought that was so good, because the going is fulfilling the Acts 1:8 as being his witnesses, but the being is, we are called to live in our identity in Jesus, and that being baptized by the Holy Spirit, like we learned about this past weekend. It's an identity thing. So they go hand in hand for us to go and to be. And so those two words really stood out to me as far as, wow, that's the overall picture right there, simplified into 2 words: go and be.
And I think you mentioned what Mark Carey shared, and I think there's 2 sides of the same coin. Interviewing St. Meyer and hearing from McManigal, you didn't get exclusively, here's what we hope to do. You get a lot of, here's what we're already doing. Here's where we've been, even in the last couple years. And I think a lot of people in this church, certainly not just those on staff, capitalized very well to the unique and weird opportunities that COVID brought up, to where we can reach people in ways we never thought possible. We're more involved in the school system now. We're seeing the Native American outreach opportunities, and the awareness of that is helpful for the congregation, but there's also a subtle encouragement there that, man, that's been going on.
Yeah, that's true. And there were lots of conversations leading up to this meeting to prepare for telling this story and really fleshing out, where is God leading our church? And I was thankfully blessed to be a part of a lot of those conversations, to hear the hearts of each pastor, and to hear the executive team, which is a combination of Mike Thomas, the elder chair, and a couple other pastors who really are driving kind of this vision of outreach. And one of those meetings, a light bulb moment came on, because I was there and Scott Santmeyer was there, and he has such a passion and heart for outreach. I mean, that's his title, Pastor of Local Outreach. And he just has a huge desire for our church to have his same passion and vision. And to be able to have him articulate clearly in this one meeting was a light bulb moment for me. He said this, he was like, this, and really it was emphasized by Mark Carey, but discipleship begins with evangelism. And then he unpacked it to say, when you're talking with your neighbor, when you're talking with your coworker, and you have the heart and purpose of speaking to them or growing in a relationship with them so they can know Christ, that is discipleship. And so to have that intent of just having our antennas on all the time, where we're interacting with people, not just to do business, not just to have a neighbor that you can go across the street and get eggs from, but I'm building a relationship with these people that are in my sphere of influence in a way for them to know Christ.
It's a lifestyle.
That's discipleship.
It's a lifestyle. I mean, that's what Jesus did. He was seeking out the lost and rubbing shoulders with believers and non-believers all the time. And so for us to take on that lifestyle, get out of our holy huddles and, break out of our comfort zones and do what we were called to do, to be his witnesses. There's a whole lifestyle transformation, which goes back to our identity. It's who we are.
It's going to be a culture shift is something that Scott is really has on his heart, and that is going to be the upcoming focus, which we heard about in the meeting as well, that John Avery spearheads. And this focus is going to be calling us to have a different perspective, to have a mindset shift, an overall lifestyle shift. And I'm excited about what's going to come out of that, because the church is going to be challenged to do some things that are going to get out of our comfort zone.
Right.
Well, similarly, I thought it was really encouraging and interesting to hear, so we had those couple testimonies that they went into depth, but then they also mentioned a lot of people. It's not the same 10 people that are already doing outreach or already doing whatever. It was a lot of different people that you don't always hear their names, and they're already in the outreach and living this out. And we might not know who they are always, but it was really great to just hear different names.
Yeah.
Well, and Mark, you've been saying this whole thing, cultural shift, mindset shift. That can be scary language at times, but it's not a change. We're not reinventing the wheel or coming up with an unbiblical way of doing things. The elders make sure of that. I mean, think about when a car shifts. It doesn't change direction. It just accommodates for where it needs to go more effectively. And so we do that. And I think in terms of a shift, it's been twice now, but they're not called congregational meetings anymore. It's a family meeting, and we want to have an informal, also a variety of feels for this thing. So the first one, we had a youth skit and some other things happening, and I'm sure we can go back to the creative board and say, what can we do next time?
I think we're going to have to go the opposite end and have our the older population.
Get the seniors of fellowship up there.
Let's have them do a skit.
Have them tell some jokes.
Yeah. There we go.
But
brainstorming session right here.
To hear Mark's vision, and I didn't know he was going to say this, to verbalize, hey, we have a baptism coming up, the end of this month. And he's like, we know who's going to be baptized. The class is actually happening this week. But the following baptism and the one after that, what would it look like to have 50 or 60 adults being baptized because they came to know the Lord and they're now affiliated and a part of our church in a way that they're being discipled and they're saying, yes, I'm identifying with Christ. I mean, wow. I could hear the pin drop in the room and the air come out of the people's lungs when they're like, oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about here. To put some actual tangible something that we can visualize and see and be like, yeah, I've been to baptism services, a few children and a couple adults, and it's nice and it's fun. We hear some testimonies, but wow. I mean, you look at the book of Acts. I mean, 3,000 people, bam, just like that, and they they're baptized. I mean, that's a cool kind of, not a goal, and we're not about goals and.
A church-wide focus can lead to something.
It could. Something like that. If a church our size takes into action this idea of outreach to our community, just the people that we know, I mean, that's a revival.
Well, I will say real quick, we didn't know Mark was going to mention the specific baptism thing, but baptism is something he's been stewing on for at least 2 weeks, too. We were just on the Sermon Spotlight with him earlier today, and he mentioned baptism in detail again to help clarify and the understandings of the Spirit and all that stuff. So even when stuff like that pops up in those meetings, it all just seems unified. I'm like, man, everybody is truly on the same page at the end of the day here in this room, and we all get to celebrate what God is doing, be encouraged by it. I will say the icebreaker at the beginning, my vantage point was awesome. I could see all the hands for the different decades. I think people like that.
Yeah, that
people
was
were excited
cool
about that.
And it was every single
afterwards,
with the amount of hands that went up before I said 2020 or later, I was like, we're out of people. That's everyone. There's not going to be a single hand, but there still ended up being 20, 25 people in the last 3 years that are now at what would have been a congregational meeting 3 years ago.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah, and my 13-year-old was at the meeting, and he was sitting in a different row than our family was.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's classic Silas.
Anyway, yeah. But he was like, I got to talk with a lady who just started coming to the church this past year, and it was really great. So like the fact that my
awesome.
13-year-old is engaging with a new member or new person who's coming. I don't know if she's been a member or not yet, but regardless, like that's pretty cool to see that happening.
Well, I will say also just another reaction. I've heard from John Van Drunen, the reaction to the facilities update that he gave. And he was getting all kinds of spectrums of people saying, well, like, I have carpet that's in my house that's 37 years old and perfectly good. Why are we going to replace the carpet? And then he's got other people who want to give their input on the color of the carpet and the style and the design.
That's classic.
And so I think you stir a little pot when you start talking about
Yeah.
our facility to people. in a
JVD
meeting
drew
like
the
that.
short straw for sure. He's up there to talk. Yeah.
Everybody's
But-
interior design
Yes.
comes out.
But even to hear the idea and the heart and tone that our facility is still meant to carry out a purpose, and that we're
Invitational.
not just spending money to spend money, but it's there to have the open
It's
doors
intentional.
for our community. Yeah, to be intentional is great. So let me just wrap us up and get your take on this. One of the passages that Mark shared, Colossians 1, and it's a common one that we talk about, especially in these kind of meetings, but that God is willed to make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Colossians 1, now 28. We proclaim him, admonishing every man and teaching every man with all wisdom, so that we may present every man complete in Christ. For this purpose also I labor, striving according to his power, which mightily works within me. That's the heartbeat of this church. That's the idea of discipleship and presenting every person complete in Christ. And I think that tone came through with all the ministries.
And knowing where the power comes from.
Knowing where the power comes from. Yeah.
It's good.
Well, you guys have anything else to say? I mean, I think we've unpacked it.
It's good. Yeah.
The content's out there. And for you guys that missed it, come to the next one. You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
Like, yeah. I would say.
When is the next one?
It's always twice a
TBD.
year, so it's going to be
Okay.
in the spring, and I will take the hit for this. And JVD, I'm sorry, you asked me a couple minutes before.
Hey, at
are
least
you
we know if they're
recording
listening.
this?"
Yeah.
And I got so distracted, I didn't get a chance to ask the person to push a record button until middle of the way. So
Okay. So we have some of it.
Refer back to this conversation, and you can liven up your conversations with people who went there. So
There you go.
there you go. Well, Alicia, Caleb, and Abby, glad to have you here as a host person. We're going to see more of you on this podcast and Sermon Spotlights. So thank you for being here. All right, guys. Well,
Thanks for hosting, birthday boy.
I'm here for you, Caleb. Yeah, you're the man, and I will take this.
I saw
and
you
I'll-
give it to
I
Alicia
took it.
right away.
No,
Yeah.
I
Hey,
took it. You
that's
didn't
for
give
him.
it. I took it.
You're slick.
I mean,
Those not able
Herbal.
to watch at home, it's an orange tea bag right here,
But you don't
lemon
drink
and
tea.
ginger. No.
I'll
Well,
drink it.
all right, let's wrap this thing up, guys. Until we meet and chat again, this is the whole thing. Let Christ be the focus of our lives each and every day.